Welcome to Sage Advice, wisdom that could save your life.
That's right. I'm Dr. Kanalik Goel.
I'm Dr. Elizabeth Sage Epstein. And here today we have our first guest of the podcast. We are so lucky.
Very honored.
Coree Costa. She has, and I'm just excited to hear it from her standpoint because we just barely started talking about it and it was too good. I had to stop her. But she has a background in integrative nutrition and she's a local chef, food maven, caterer, healthy food caterer, doing things I've never seen before, just making healthy, simple, delicious local food, just so beautiful and enjoyable and something incredible and sacred for the community. So welcome, Coree.
Hopefully I don't cry.
What a great introduction.
That was really great. I should have, well, it will be recorded.
Hey, that was just from my heart. That's what I think of you.
That's awesome.
I mean, so tell us about your background and how you got into food.
So I think whenever I really tap into like where this came from, I was very fortunate to grow up in a home where my mom made dinner every night. We sat down at the table for dinner. I'm discovering now that that is a very rare experience. And so I think that's actually where it started. Where I thought it was starting was just like, you know, fitness, wellness, these things that started kind of coming up in my 20s of like, I don't know, things you start paying attention to outside of, I don't know, how do I feel better, I guess, about myself. Yeah. And I wasn't really like into fitness as easy as food was. Food was always easy. I was always curious. I always loved going and sitting down and eating. So it was a love of food. I'm very fortunate also that it didn't become any sort of addiction. You know, I think so many women grow up with a curiosity about food or a, what am I trying to say? Like you're trying to find a balance with how to diet, basically. And that's what it becomes, is something basically unhealthy, because most diets are. And so I'm lucky that it didn't go the other route. Instead, it just became a curiosity through travel, different spices, different ways to eat. You know, it was always just like this beautiful journey. Not really knowing that I wanted to cook, because that was never a thing. It was always just this idea of feeling good around food, which became like a medicinal thing. And then wanting to kind of share that with people, not even through a modality of service, like as an occupation, but I just loved having people come over and like giving them snacks. Like I didn't know it was my thing. I didn't know I would chef, which, you know, was later down the road. But when I look at how this came together, I'm like, oh, you were always just like the snack girl. You're always bringing it to the table.
Yeah.
So that's how it developed.
And these were snacks you were making?
Just like even just basic things. Yeah. Like I would just make sure if I knew we were going to the park, like, do we have apples and cheese? I mean, basic stuff, you know, nothing ever really I was doing. Again, never knew I would chef. Always loved good food. Could sit at the sushi bar for 3 hours, you know. But the want to cook didn't come until I met my partner, and I was just like, wow, he cooks really well. I'm like embarrassed. How am I going to show him that I like care about him? And that's where this really took motion maybe 7 years ago. Was me wanting to learn how to cook a whole roast chicken. Because I didn't know how yet.
Oh my gosh.
That's how it started.
So what was that journey like, learning how to pick a whole roast chicken?
It was easier than I thought, which is crazy. I think that there is a talent, there is a skill set within me that I wasn't aware of. And so to say, oh, it's easy, it also comes with a confidence and with, you know, access to good quality products, good quality ingredients and all of those things. But trial and error of like thinking I could make something well and it going wrong. And then what did I do? So it's science and math and all of those things, which is why I don't bake. I'm not a great baker because it's really difficult to follow strict guidelines. But with cooking, it was always really basic ingredients. Like because I have no culinary training, I didn't have this fear of needing to do it a certain way, which is kind of like, well, these are the vegetables that I got. Let's look up a recipe, what to do with artichokes. And so it's just developed out of pure curiosity.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is good.
There's so much to dig into and like all that you just said. I mean, we talked before in our previous episode about food as service.
That's right.
And, you know, a way to give something to your partner and to your friends. And, you know, we were talking just about different things like what does food mean? It's not just a diet. It's not just survival, but it's something loving. It's something, you know, sacred. It's something beautiful. And I feel like you just appreciate all those things about food. I mean, on your Instagram, you'll post a juicy strawberry. You know, just the most simple, basic things, but it just looks so delicious and luxurious and incredible. And whenever you post your spreads of food, they all look so effortless. And I can tell that there is a simplicity there too, but it's also luxurious.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's always been the thing is like, to put those charcuteries together, which is kind of how I started taking clients. It wasn't cooking yet. It was just putting together these spreads. I could be so creative in a way that I've never had an artistic modality. You know, I've never had like a medium, music. I've loved all of those things, but I've never practiced one or been confident enough to say I was any of those.
Right.
But then when the food thing came, it was like, I could make these beautiful things out of just raw ingredients basically, and make it look beautiful. And again, until you reflect on some of this stuff down the road, you're like, oh, wow, I am really like, that was a talent that was in there that I didn't know yet.
It's like cooking as an art.
Yeah.
Right? It was a form of creativity, like you're saying, an outlet of expression.
Right.
I love how you're describing food not as a means to an end, but like as an end in of itself.
Right.
You know, it's not this form of just sustenance, but something that you found beautiful in its own way. And to like have that creative outlet that we all want to do something creative. It's part of the human experience, and sort of organically discovering it and then realizing, oh, I just feel amazing getting to do this.
And then seeing other people enjoy it. That was like a really cool thing too, to have feedback of your creative output, you know, and then it would be gone. And that was the crazy part of the art that I was creating, is that it was something that was just like, here it is, and then it's gone, and now you're going to create something else. It was a really, again, in hindsight, all of these things and seeing how it came together. And when you asked that question, it reminded me, I was super all over the place with jobs. I've done everything. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life per se. I've always loved service in some modality. Didn't know if that would be social work or whatever. And I had a boss that was just like, you need to just like, what are you passionate about? What have you always cared about? And I was like, well, I guess food, but I didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah.
And of course, as the universe provides, when you start putting it out there, integrative nutrition started popping into everything. I was meeting people. They'd been certified. You know, all of these different ways of like, okay, well, this is weird and I should pay attention to it, as I've always done, like curious pursuit. So I looked it up. I thought it sounded like an amazing course, not even to use it as like my vessel to teach, but also just the knowledge itself. It was dietary theory, and I didn't really know what I was fully getting into or what I'd do with it, but I was excited to be learning something that I had always kind of had a curiosity about. And so as that developed, and learning about foods that were actual medicine is how the journey of what can I make that's simple into beautiful. Like, okay, you have a deficiency of X, Y, or Z. You need to put more of this vegetable, this mineral, whatever in. How do you incorporate it to someone who doesn't like to eat it or has never experienced it? How do you make it beautiful? How do you make it like satiating? And so it was kind of like its own little science experiment of just how to use things to be, I don't know, more enjoyable to the masses.
Right.
Like,
wow.
Yeah. Which was the science of it is really, I think, what took it above and beyond. Because then I started getting clients who were working with their doctors. They would get prescribed or diagnosed with something. Well, I don't know how to eat like that. How do you change your diet like that? And I'm like, well, let's look at it and see what we can take out, what we can add in. And that's kind of when the cycle started happening of like, well, if you know what I'm supposed to eat, why don't you just cook for me? And I'm like, I don't cook.
Yeah, that's not my thing.
And it was the same time that I met my guy, and he was cooking. And I was just like, I'm going to start cooking.
Yeah.
Then I was people were asking me to cater. You guys, in my kitchen, not that this is a big one, I was in a smaller kitchen with a 1 burner and a toaster oven, like a nice toaster oven.
Sure.
I catered a yoga retreat with those 2 items.
Wow.
They had no idea.
They had no idea.
They had no idea. I showed up. She was doing a picnic, like lunch style thing down at the beach. And she's like, is that something you could do? And I'm like, okay, 30 people. And I look at my price range for it. And I'm like, wow, I put so much time and effort into that, but all a learning curve.
Yeah, right.
And they were so happy. And each of those things was like, oh, I can do more than I think I can. So I think all of that to say, like, nurture your spirit, your curiosity, all of those things. Obviously, I was eating well this whole time. That's always been something that's come very like natural to me.
Yeah.
But the universe provides.
And that's kind of a recurring theme that you just mentioned that we had talked about last time too, of melding the beauty and joy of food with food as medicine. So that's really cool that was something that was part of your origin story.
Yeah.
Those worlds were colliding at the same time for you. And that's kind of how you started your business.
And now inching into these homes that they don't know fully why I started. And I'm cooking for their families and coming in, and their kids are now eating more vegetables. And, you know, maybe there are parts where I'm like, oh, why am I making this for them? Like, I don't want them to eat this. And so I mesh it and make it with different ingredients so that it's healthier.
Yeah.
And use that as a point of education for people who aren't necessarily looking for that education. But when you make something delicious and people are curious about it and they feel better,
Right.
you know,
Right.
making food in a way that people don't feel crappy after. Like, you bring a charcuterie board to somewhere, think of how many parties you've been to and you're like, oh, and then we just stood there and ate all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I have people being like, that's the most vegetables I've eaten in a day, just because they were cut up and beautifully prepared
That's
with different
right.
colors of hummus.
Yeah, the
And-
aesthetic and the experience
right?
all brought them this joy, and they were
Right.
like, "Oh, I can have my cake and eat it too." I had no idea.
Yeah. It's definitely it's a science experiment too with understanding humans, and we really do love aesthetics.
Yeah.
You know, I was working in people's refrigerators and going in and just revamping how it looked. Put it in glass containers, put water in the veggies as they're sliced. Things were getting devoured in the fridge just because of how people were seeing it, because we're such visual creatures. And it's exciting to think that people are eating better. I know that me being a chef is not my end all. So these kind of conversations, meeting with other like-minded people who are like, how do we expand this? How do we get this education into more people's brains? That's where it needs to go.
I see.
The next level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So exciting.
I'm lucky that I get to be in people's homes. I'm lucky that I'm sitting people down to the dinner table. I mean, that's really a powerful,
It is.
beautiful thing to be a part of for people who may not sit down unless I'm there for their dinner. And then they gather, and it's like, we're so lucky if we grew up with that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a really beautiful ritual.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of ritual with food that makes it more enjoyable. You know, waking up in the morning and cutting the lemon to put in your water and understanding why that's beneficial. There's just a lot of science, and we have to figure out how. Dumb it down is not the appropriate way. Make it more accessible.
Right.
You know, because it is quite basic, simple information, but we cloud it with all of this other, I guess, diet culture, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you're getting to there, you know, I was going to bring up some data. We always like to bring up a little bit of data, but published in Circulation, which is American Heart Association, big journal, that the prevalence of the ideal diet is consistently negligible. So less than 1% that people meet that. And that's across all age groups, young and old. So it's part of, they name it as part of why we are missing the mark and people are dying of cardiovascular disease. So it's really, it's a big problem, even though it feels like there's so much going on about diet, and it's like, there's still, that's kind of what made me want to focus on it as well, because it's like, we're still missing the mark. So there's still room for me here.
Of course.
Like, there's so many cookbooks and there's so many approaches, but it's like, no, but we're still not doing it.
Yeah, it's still not.
We can still contribute.
Yeah, and I think it's also about having people understand the importance of talking about it too, and having these rituals and how it can feel to eat great food. And, I think that's something that people take for granted. And I can't blame a lot of people. The culture, the society has sort of led us to think about other things that are more important, not prioritize this aspect.
Convenience food.
Yeah.
That's
Work,
right.
Yeah.
Money, power, whatever you're focusing on, not time to cook. And we really believe that. And I think that the research is starting to show that cooking at home is really a key step to eating a healthy diet and to preventing chronic diseases, because you're going to be avoiding those ultra processed foods and having just whole foods, real ingredients at home. And then all the other things we talked about too, connection, sitting down at the dinner table,
of course,
and everything, all the other side benefits of it. But I think learning to cook at home, going through the process you did, where it's like, I don't know how to do it, but this matters to me. I can figure it out. Let me jump in. Let me make a recipe.
Yeah.
Let me make a whole roast chicken,
That's the mentality.
So
yeah.
That's right.
I see so many homes, because I'm working in these family dynamics. Moms are taking the time to make the food. The kids don't eat it. There's guilt. There's anger. There's like so many emotions around getting food to the table. And so there's like so many layers. It's like, okay, how do we get the food to the table? Who's cooking it? Which person is responsible for that? I mean, in the home, there's so many dynamics beyond the food, because the food for us is like, we would love it to be organic. We'd love it to come from the farmer's market, all of these things, but that's only accessible to so many people as well.
Totally.
And, I'm lucky that cooking in my home is now something that we do that more than we would ever go out, and the food's more enjoyable. And it's crazy, because I tell so many clients, like, the confidence that you get from that self-care of cooking for yourself and being so in tune with the why, which I guess is a really good topic that I find most important. Why am I eating this? If we can just have more people focus on why am I eating this, understanding the mineral, the micronutrient, and also with the food that is crappy, why am I eating this? What is the emotional connection to why I'm eating this? So we have to almost find which layer is most accessible to everyone to have the conversation, because I know people were like, oh, I just went to the farmer's market and I bought all these things and they're beautiful. And they're like, I'm not going to spend $5
yeah, that's right.
on this artichoke because I have 3 kids to feed with that $10. Totally. So the why, I think, keeps coming back for me of why are we feeding this to so-and-so? Why am I feeding this to myself? Mm-hmm. And hopefully then you can get to a little bit deeper of a layer. And then I guess it's up to us to find these grocery lists and things that exist within a very small income household. And how do we actually show food that's healthy in that setting? Because that's one thing I've tried to avoid within my platform, if you will, is saying that you have to buy organic or that you have to of course that would be great, but I'm going to push away so many people who maybe don't have access to that. And so it's a slippery slope, but I'm finding that the essence of what's most impactful is why. Why are you eating that?
That's something anybody can relate to, you know, wherever walk of life you're coming from, because we all eat, we all have to eat, and we also all have this beautiful relationship with food. We discussed our personal journeys, and everybody has one. And I think being mindful of it and maybe reflecting on, like you said, the habits that influence the good foods, the not so good foods. Can we take a moment to stop and reflect on it and come up with better ways to help us approach food and just improve our relationship with food.
Yeah.
I'm so with you,
Yeah, I think the idea that it could be for everyone, no matter where you're at, you can do something with this. Any socioeconomic group, any culture is really key. And there was a paper that I found after our last episode. We kept talking about food as medicine. We probably said about 10 times. And you said it too. And JACC, which is our big cardiology journal, came out with a paper last year, Food as Medicine Strategies for Nutrition Security and Cardiometabolic Health Equity. So an incredible paper where it was a review where they're just talking about, the power of food as medicine initiatives that are really aimed at preventing disease and advancing health equity and how they were planning to do that. It's really amazing, but I think that touches on that, we have to be accessible for everyone. And we're talking simple basics.
Right. I mean, I'm in the grocery store every day.
Yeah.
It is so frustrating that we don't have, which is maybe what my next thing needs to be, is not in people's homes, but Congress lawmaking type situation. Why do we have the middle aisles of a grocery store? It's confusing. It's convenient. It's it's cheaper. Why don't we just have the things that people need to shop and then adjust prices to that?
Yeah.
Because we can't give convenient options that aren't beneficial to people's health. It's dangerous and it's sad.
Absolutely. Oh my, I love that you brought that up because I have some data on ultra processed foods because that's what's in the middle aisles.
Yeah.
And so what are ultra processed foods? They're industrial formulations made mostly or entirely from substances extracted from foods. Oils, fats, sugar, starch, protein isolates, or synthesized in labs. Flavorings, colorings, emulsifiers, preservatives. They contain little or no whole food. They include 5 or more ingredients. They're designed for convenience, their shelf life and palatability, and they're highly engineered to be hyper palatable and often over consumed. So it's things like soft drinks, sweetened beverages, packaged snacks, instant noodles and soups, reconstituted meat products, mass produced breads, sweetened breakfast cereals, meal replacement shakes, fast food items.
And how do you tell someone, unless this is your journey and curiosity, that those foods are actually made to be addictive?
That's right. Like you just said, I was thinking the same thing. They're designed for you to be obsessed with them. Meanwhile, they're actually so much worse for you than any of the other whole foods.
And not providing nutritional, so one of the things that I talk to clients about as well is what cells are you feeding? Cellularly, what are you ingesting? Because if we can kind of give also this educational component to people about okay, here's your body and we need what vitamins, okay? What foods provide those vitamins? When I was doing a kids workshop, we draw the rainbow and I would be we need all of these colors. The red provides us, think of, we do little drawings in it, your heart, I'm not even going to remember what any of these were.
Yeah.
I should get it out actually and have it on my fridge. But it was so that they could start thinking about all of the colors. First, you're needing to eat all of the colors of the rainbow. And then what are those providing your body? Because when you start feeling sick or even to avoid feeling ill, let's make sure we've got all of these things. So then I had these kids going home and being they were aware of how much water they were drinking in a day. They were asking their parents why there wasn't something green on the table for dinner. I mean, it was wild. The parents were really excited and also damn you, Coree. We've never had anything purple in our house.
Right.
But this idea too of our bodies are a science project, really. And if we can understand everything that happens every day is basically a miracle. I mean, we're breathing, we're doing all of these things, but to think about cellularly ingesting and feeding it, I think once we give people an education and empower them through, not that you can't eat these things, but what can you eat to feel better? It's an advantage instead of what you can't eat.
Positive light.
Right. Because that sounds scary. Ultra processed foods are what are most people's snack cabinets are full of.
And it is, I mean, there's some data from cohort studies that, and this is something you wouldn't tell people, but that's what we're talking about here is that, but I think this brings into piece. We always want to talk about what can save your life. What's something that can save your life?
Right.
There is data that eating ultra-processed foods makes you more likely to die. And so eating simple food at home can save your, it actually can save your life. And that is kind of empowering.
Totally.
And so there was a study in France, the Nutrinet Santé study in 2019. It found there was a 10% increase in ultra-processed food consumption. So only a 10% increase was associated with a 14% higher risk of all-cause mortality, meaning dying for any reason. And then there was a Spanish cohort study in 2020 that found that the highest consumption of ultra-processed foods had a 62% higher risk of all-cause mortality.
Oh my gosh.
Dying for any reason. So, I mean, it's scary, but I find it to be like, okay, if we just start by eating at home, and rather than saying I have to eat the Mediterranean diet, I have to eat the DASH diet, I have to whatever, just eat at home, eat a real food, then you're going to live longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think about like two big barriers. People are like the time, the money, right? Like to cooking for myself and learning how to do it, putting in the effort, failing a few times to getting good. You know, if you don't have a natural curiosity, how do you combat those two big things? But think about the data. Like one, it's way more expensive to take care of these chronic issues that you're going to develop over your time and buying all the medicines, whatever it takes. And also you lower your quality of life. And then if you have some debilitating illness that, you know, takes away years on your life, I mean, that's time there. Like you think of it from a preventative perspective too. I mean, that's how it's so hard to get over that hump of, you know, why can't I just go to fast food or get the middle aisle stuff that's cheaper and quicker? But you have to step back and think about, like, we have the real data that's showing us the effects of that food. So,
and I think this information, it's so interesting what we'll do for others opposed to ourselves. Like parents would be shocked that they were doing this to their children. They might still eat that way. They wouldn't want to do that to their kids. So it's crazy. Like we can receive this information and maybe not do something about it for ourselves.
That's agreed.
So I do think, like you said, we can't tell people this. And I'm like, but why?
Yeah, right.
You know, do you know Shaka? Dr. You guys should have her on. She's amazing. She's a pediatrician up in Del Mar. She uses this fear tactic with parents who she's like on the third and fourth kid, you know, and she's like, listen, we have a relationship here. I'm going to tell you, you can't drink juice with dinner. You can't drink soda. Like she's taken on a more like friend-based. Yeah. This is basic facts here. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm telling you to help you. And it's wild. You know, I was very in the beginning, like, I'm not a nurse. I'm not a this, you know, people are like, oh, you're a nutritionist. No, I'm not. Like, this is my own journey with food. I'm sharing my knowledge of what I think is important and effective. Other conversations with other people who are smarter than me, who are saying also like, yeah, this is these are the facts.
That's right.
But it's almost like within medical that we need like an in-between person that isn't have these rigid, like, well, you can't tell your patient that. Well, what if you hire an integrative nutrition coach to come in and be like, well, I'm the middleman and I'm telling you this is what's going on. It's
no, I'm with you.
There's so many logistics around like being able to tell somebody, like basically scare the crap out of them. Because I think if people had that information, they wouldn't do what they're doing.
But I like phrasing it in a positive way of like, we talk about Mediterranean diet, 30% less likely to die of a heart attack, you know?
And Mediterranean diet is very easy to, I mean, it really is not this like crazy thing that you have to commit to. It's basic, clean food. I think it's wonderful. And I don't know if you do plugs for people, the Mediterranean Dish, she is like the greatest website ever for recipes. Everything she puts out there is phenomenal. I make so much of her food. And she kind of, it's nice to see it through her website, through her recipes, because you're like, okay, now I can start kind of crafting. If I always have olive oil, lemon, garlic, and some herbs, I can always make a dressing. You know, maybe I only eat fish once a week, or maybe you know, like you can start to kind of frame ingredients lists and what's in your fridge, because I think so many people also decide, I'm going to eat well, and they go buy all the food and then it goes bad in their fridge.
Right.
You know, so it really is a plan.
Makes them less likely to do it again.
Of course, you wasted the money.
I'm
not going to do that.
Right.
So, I mean, I know there's a lot of like delivery meal plans and things. It's almost like you have to get so in touch with yourself, which is one thing that was so great about integrative nutrition, is nobody has your answer. We're bio-individual. You are the only person who knows how you feel when you eat, drink, all of these things, right? So you can craft your own experience with food. You know your limits.
Love that.
Keep a journal of, I didn't feel good when I ate that. I feel really good when I eat this. But this idea of bio-individuality and understanding that like you're not searching outside of yourself. Your guts will tell you, you know?
Yeah.
And that was, I think, what was really cool about starting to craft just the way I ate, is I was just thinking, well, I feel good when I eat this, so I'm going to eat vegetables. You know, I feel like in our 20s, even in our 30s, we're like, I'm a this, I'm a that. Just figure out what you want to eat and what feels good. And then you'll slowly like meander down the stream to what you want to eat.
I think about like that curiosity that you mentioned. It's so fun. It was so fun for me, just speaking out of my own experience, to experiment and study myself. You know, was journaling, just like seeing how I'd do in the kitchen or how I'd feel after I cook something new, and just realizing, you know, I'd have those failures and I'd have like stuff go bad when I started to buy, you know, more groceries and stuff. But, you know, a few times I'd kind of take it slow and steady and kind of do it day by day, week by week. And you start to understand, and I start to develop my own culinary, you know, focus and what works for me, what works for Kunal.
Yeah.
You know, and now I just feel like, you know, my kitchen looks pretty different than your guys' kitchens, but it's all whole food. It's all stuff that I really, really love. And it took me time. It took me experimenting. And that whole journey was so fun. Like looking back, I mean, I'm still on it every day, but, you know, really getting into it 2 years ago, just taking the time to experiment. I mean, it's a really fun process if you can, and I don't devote a lot of time. I'm a busy resident, you know? So, you know,
well, you've made it functional.
Yeah.
Your kitchen is functional for you, you know? That's
right.
And I think that's a fear of like having spices that you know you're going to use and having access. It's a relationship with ourselves that I think, like, not to go crazy deep, but most people aren't willing to take care of themselves. This is in many ways in our life, but our relationship with food is usually pretty indicative of like how we're living the rest of our life. Like if you can have a real great appreciation for nurturing yourself, you're probably doing a pretty good job of paying attention to other things. It's the thing that most people avoid.
Right.
But it is you caring for yourself.
That's right.
You know,
investing in yourself.
And especially with health. I mean, you guys are working with patients, and seeing someone who isn't willing to put in that work or their time for themselves is frustrating and upsetting, because they could have so much power and control over their well-being if they can commit to that. So it's like empowering people with that they have this superpower if they're just willing to kind of like get curious.
Yeah.
It's hard.
No, and we're not afraid to get deep, actually. We love talking about like the inner workings of the mind. But I think, I mean, taking time to care for yourself, there's something about that that's really hard. You know, it feels selfish, or, you know, you just can't prioritize that time-wise. It's not going to be lucrative. It's not going to be productive, you know, but it is.
Right.
And it's going to be a ripple effect too, because it'll impact your family and your loved ones, and your friends and your patients.
Yeah.
So
it's a crazy little self-confidence thing that I tell people, like, it's so funny when I started paying attention to my relationship with myself and being like, I drank lemon water every day this week. I was like, it was the best thing I'd ever done. You know, like proud. This tiny, and that pride in something associated with food was kind of like my tipping point of like, wow, this is a confidence you don't know until you do it.
Right.
And it's so empowering to know what you need. Like even with our cycle, right? Knowing what foods that are going to eat more root vegetables right before, during the certain phases of your period and all of these things, like that's empowering information and you feel so much different when you follow it. So it's like this beautiful relationship that I encourage people to explore because most people aren't, and it's super empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's actually really great too to be able to do that for yourself and like become empowered to take care of yourself in the way. And then I love what you said about how it's sort of reflective of your relationship with yourself and that you learn how to cook and maybe you learn how to, feel that confidence with food. That'll spread into the other realms of your life, with how you interact with other people, how you do at your job, building that confidence, exercise, like starting from that point. I mean, you're right. Food is like a key essential of our lives that we all, eat.
And if you think about all these other things that we'll do to get certified, education, like those are things we're proud of.
Yeah.
But they're fleeting is the wrong word. Like you have a celebration, you have the graduation or whatever. Food is something you do every single day.
Yeah.
Every decision you make to ingest something is like a reason to be proud of yourself.
That's great.
And it's a crazy thing to be able to, as you said, the ripple effect. People are like, you seem so happy and healthy. I'm like, I am taking really great care of myself.
Yes.
How would you not radiate that? It's hard to do, but once you're doing it, it's like, I don't know. It becomes basic.
Right. You're right. I think people sometimes make the assumption like she's just a great, happy person, and that's
so much work.
Right. So much work. I think same with us. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Lifelong journey, lifelong commitment.
Yeah.
And it takes time and effort. It really does. But I'm going to close this because when you're talking to a great artist or a composer, you don't need to quote data at them.
No, it's so great. I love it too.
Sometimes you just need to talk, and I want to hear about how look, here we have water. Do you see this beautiful plant? This purple iridescent plant.
It's African blue basil.
Oh.
And
it's like, how do you not want to drink after that? Right.
It's gorgeous.
Like,
And it's in my garden, which is another thing I will definitely say. Having just a small area to grow something and watch it develop and to be able to ingest it. Whoa, guys. Like the first time I grew something and ate it was probably tomatoes. And I was just like, it's so special. The strawberries that are growing out there right now. It's it's such a wonderful, and again, not everyone has the space to do that. Maybe you grow herbs in a glass in your kitchen.
I live in an apartment with a balcony, and I just bought 3 big tubs, just like, $10 tubs with soil. And I just started growing herbs. This was like last year. And
Magic.
Just like you said, like to see, like pick the kale off and put it in the dish I made. I was like,
so
whoa.
good, right?
My grandpa did that. I watched him growing up with Indian food. He had this huge garden. And so I always had this in my mind, like one day I'm going to do it. But I live in a small apartment in the city downtown. So I'm never going to. And I was like, why don't I just do something small?
A tiny one.
And I'm telling you, like you hit it on the head. I mean, that first time you get to grow something and see and then actually eat it.
Right.
Like I like it was tomato too, the first time. Like seeing this beautiful tomato grow out. It was a cherry tomato. And I was just like, it tastes so good.
Yeah.
It feels
so good. How am I getting
to
so much joy from this little tiny thing? But it's real.
It's real.
There's this guy, well, the book is here. You guys should look through it. It's The Guide to Becoming Alive. And he basically talks about these very raw, simple elements of life that we have become so detached from, and the joy that you can get from these really basic things. Putting basil in water, displaying your food as something that you're like proud of or you enjoy, and just being connected. I think like we're all searching for more connection. And it's crazy the things that I get. I mean, my boyfriend's a fireman. He's gone so much. For me to be able to be here and like cook a meal for myself and still feel joy, sit down at the table and like still have that moment because I know what it gives me to do that, it's a pretty amazing relationship. And so I think, yeah, like getting into, if you can go to a farmer's market is great, but really starting to be curious about the supreme foods, which are things that are in season at the time, right? They're going to taste the best. They're going to be the highest quality.
Yeah.
We're going into the grocery store. We're buying things that are always there, that aren't even in season. They're expensive. They don't taste right. They're probably covered in things, Anyway, the list goes on. But finding foods that are seasonal and then deciding what you want to do with them. I don't know, very basic. Again, I have no culinary training, so it's not like I'm over here making sauces and all these things. I'm like, this would be really good with some like lime on it. Just like random, very simple, keep it simple.
I like this. You're hitting upon some practical tips for how to incorporate the joy of delicious, healthy food. So, you talked about growing something, you can do that, or buying something and displaying it like art on, and then it just plants that seed in your brain that these are delicious and gorgeous and I just want to eat one. Connection, you said. So, and then seasonal. Seasonal, because those are going to be the most luscious, delicious, least expensive.
Right. We're hoping, right?
Yeah.
And then local, when I go into people's houses, or at least people say, oh, so you're a chef. I'm like, I just try and educate people about local seasonal food. So how many vendors, do we have? Do you know the guy who you're buying fish from? When you go to the farmer's market, do you have people that you're like, maybe it's not organic. It came from a however mile radius. And I know that I'm supporting this person, and I've met his wife and she works the stand as well. And there's just, again, these bits of connection that you couldn't have told me in the beginning that was strengthening, I guess, my fabric. But looking back on now that this is how I've lived my life for X amount of years, why are you so happy? Or what brings you joy? I'm like, these very simple things of contributing to a community that you kind of are like spiraling in, and that feels good. That is care. Right. That's the self-care as well.
Totally.
Wow.
So teaching that, I guess, is difficult. Again, it's an onion. When I get a client, I'm just like, where do you want to start?
Yeah.
Where are you so that we can go to the next step? Because I don't need to tell you where I am. It took me years to be living in this way that's now become kind of free flowing. But where are you, and like, what do you want to feel next?
Oh man, that's like the integrative approach to me. Like the way that I practice and Liz practices too, I'm sure, is we meet the patient or the person, whoever they are, where they're at. Meet them where they're at, right?
So
like,
overwhelming.
Don't like expect them to just like follow your direct, like have this paternalistic way of telling them, I'm gonna make this food for you and here you go. It's like, no, what do you want to learn from this? What's your relationship with food?
Yeah.
So I love that you're doing that with your.
Well, it's crazy. My biggest demand from clients, because this has kind of become a word of mouth business, everybody wants a meal plan dropped off on Sunday. And I said, I'm never going to do that. You are so disconnected at that point, not only from that I dropped it off Sunday and you're trying to eat it on Friday. I'm like, it would be so much better if you just learned how to cook the thing you wanted to on Sunday and then made different meals out of it. There's still a disconnect from like, oh, well, just make it for me and then I'll eat it and it'll be healthy and it'll be fine. And I'm like, but there's still another layer. Like, I won't deliver food to people in plastic. It's always glass containers. It's always like, there has to be a line basically for me between clients that like, I'm not willing to go back on. And I'm not going to do meal prep. Everyone's like, oh, just, do this business where you could be shipping these things across the nation. And I'm like,
but
think of my footprint at that point. Right. Like, that's not something I support anyway. I don't want to plastic up a meal and send it across the country. It doesn't.
But I just don't even feel like that's your passion. Like you're looking for root cause.
Right.
Let's talk about the relationship we have with food and how to understand it and build that community and how it can nurture us.
Yeah.
Like right now, you're a big part of this community.
It feels good. It does. It's like, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I've been in La Jolla for X amount of years, but now to be cooking in all of these different homes. And like I said, word of mouth has been really incredible. I mean, I think that's a testimony of, in itself. It's just like my website I did when I first started was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never updated it because I don't really refer people to it. And it's ever evolving. Yeah. I feel like I don't think I'm going to cook. I think that this has got me to this point. I've made some really amazing connections. Like some of my clients, I would never have dreamed of cooking for people of this like stature. It's wild. And I'm in their homes and I'm part of their families. And so now to be here and be like, okay, well, you got here and now you have like a louder voice. Yeah. So what are you saying? Because it's the dangling carrot is really easy to keep getting paid and do this. Yes. But like, what do I want to do with it? Like how many more people can I reach? Because I can only be in so many people's kitchen.
Man, so I have to acknowledge just how special it is to hear that's your story, because, a lot of people take the risk averse, easy path, like, and understandably, we have to sustain ourselves financially. We have to pay the bills, but then to like take the risk, it is a risk to go off the beaten path and ask yourself that question. I'm sure day in, day out, what do I really love? What is my mission? What is my purpose? What is my passion? And keep asking yourself that. And then you've created, just by doing that, even though it was murky, how's this going to work? How's this going to spread? How is this website going to manifest? Now you've found a path and a journey. And then, even now you're questioning, like people are telling you, oh, you could go this way. You could go this way. And you're still trying to take all that info in and decide for yourself, what is it for me? And I just wanted to acknowledge how special that is and something that a lot of people, I try to embody myself too. And so it's so cool to see. You guys are,
when you start spreading the message of something that you truly believe in and are passionate about, it's easy. Like you enjoy it every day. Yeah, and I think that there's a message that's not being heard. That's why we're here today, is to like discuss it and keep the ball rolling. And I don't know. I feel like there's easy ways out of like being a disruptor, basically. And I feel like I have a disruptive spirit. Like I want to be louder than I am about it. Like we said, like the reason when I started doing integrative nutrition, I was like, this is like a legislative situation. Like I never would have imagined I'd be cooking ever. So it's crazy that it's gone here. But because it's gone here, it has given me, a platform to basically, now what? Which is exciting. But this message that we have, that's like, you can't shove it down. Like the more you become educated, the more data you read, all of the information that keeps building just gives you more fuel to be like, how many more people can I reach with this? Because that's, I think that's our goal.
I think you're definitely reaching more people than your clients that you actually cook for, because I actually didn't even know all this about you. But I knew, that's why I invited you on here, because I knew I kind of did know, because we've never had this conversation before.
Right.
But you live this way and you exude it. And
do you know that's my favorite word?
Like, thank you. I love that word so much. Because it's real. When you're doing what you're passionate about, you do that. Everything that you do, like, it's just, you're displaying this, you're posting the strawberry, you're sharing your cooking it. It just looks so incredible, but it's so simple. You're driving down by Lindensea and appreciating the sunset. It's like everything is just this whole lifestyle of, like you said, maybe that book is like reconnecting to the things that matter. And so I think you're exuding that. I already knew all this about you, even though you never said it to me, and you didn't write it on your website, and you didn't actually post it on your Instagram. But I could tell, just the way that you appreciate a bunch of flowers, even.
I'm a big believer that the way you do one thing is sort of speaks to how you do everything. Like you kind of mentioned that earlier too, and I've thought that a lot about how I carry myself in one realm of my life. Like there's this like deeper core way that you can live, right?
Of course.
I was going to ask you, speaking to that, is the concept of being present. Is that something you think about, reflect on?
Totally. Meditate every day. Like I think that being present, finding joy in all of these like small things is kind of like this human condition of like, people are searching for joy. It's literally in front of us, and if you're not present, you're not going to see it. Yeah. And so these small things of like, I do love the strawberry. I water the chard in the morning and it has dew on it. And I'm like, oh, look at this. It's so beautiful. Amazing. Is it this like simple, maybe somebody could see it as she doesn't have enough to do. She's paying attention to these things. No. I think it's a very, like, I lived in Thailand for a little while. I feel like this Buddhist, this very ancient tradition of like joy in the minute. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's funny. My boyfriend's a fireman. He graduated first in his class. And I remember watching him go through this. And we'd go camping and he was so meticulous about like, this guy is crazy. Mm-hmm. This concept of how you do one thing is how you do everything, is how he lives. And I was so appreciative of that notion of just like, you can't fuss some of it. You can't, just because nobody's watching doesn't mean you just like push this part to the side and then you do the other things. And for so many people, that's food. Right. Nobody's watching, or I can do this. Nobody's going to like care or know how I'm doing this. But that self-care is exactly, and I think in so many homes, I try and talk to parents about like, don't tell your kids what they can and can't eat. Just eat it.
Show, don't tell.
My parents never talked to me about food. I mean, we didn't grow up with a lot of money. So dinner was basic. You ate what was on your plate. But I remember when I hit my 20s and I was like, I don't feel good. Like, I'm not eating well. Yeah. Mom always ate a massive salad. Like, why I remembered that and started eating salads all out of nowhere, just like huge salads with like every vegetable I could imagine in it, was just from perceptual, like seeing her eat that.
Right.
So it's just like, what is it? I'm trying to think of this quote I've had on my fridge forever. It's be the change you seek. And it's also just like, influence is not the only factor. It is the only factor. Like it is the only factor is for you to live it and hope that it is a ripple effect, because we can teach, we can preach, we can do all of these things. If someone sees you and sees joy and health and all of these other things, they want a part of that.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I guess that's why we end up getting into the jobs that we do, is because we're curious about it and we want to be the best at it, I guess, but that self-seeking is filling our cup. And so then when you see someone, you're not empty looking for things. You're like, I'm overflowing. You want some of it?
Right. That's such a great way to say it.
Because you're making the right choices that are hard work. It's really hard work to be healthy.
I think the point that exuding it and being that example, it just brings up for me, for doctors, it's so key. I think we should have this in the office when you're sitting down to see a patient. You should have some artichoke and some oranges and just be living that. I think it's so important. How many patients do you see in a day, and you have that touch point, and you really need to be impressing that message, not just by telling, but
by
modeling. No, being the change you want to see has been in my mind for so many years.
Is that Gandhi?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of my main quotes of my whole life is just like thinking of that notion.
We act like, I'm just one person. How am I going to change the world? I can't. But that's the mentality. If you think that way, that I'm not going to, then nothing's going to ever improve in the world. Right. We have to just acknowledge you can only control yourself and your actions and what you do. But, having that belief that, okay, I can have an impact, and then you see the ripple. Like, I think all three of us have seen it. Yeah. Right. And more importantly, it gives me a sense of self-worth and gives me fulfillment to just live that way.
Know that you're being it.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Just being it.
Yeah. It's good.
It's great.
All those, the being an example of something is when you enjoy it and it's a passion. Like, I think it's easy. But the self-care and eating, I think, is really like foundational for life.
Mhm.
It's like you have to make time for that.
You do.
Has to prioritize. You have to prioritize.
I can't remember if I read a book or something, but I started just like making my bed every day, which I didn't do. I didn't have that habit growing up. Like I had a messy bed in the morning, or I just was like, okay, I'll make it, but maybe some of the time, whatever.
You moved on from you got out of bed, you moved on.
And I was like, a lot of people have that reasoning, like, okay, well, I'll just lie in bed in like 8 hours, 10 hours. So what's the big deal? But so I can't remember when, maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago now, I just started committing to making it every day. That small step. There's a book I think that describes that act of just making your bed every day has that influence. Because like we were saying, like you do one thing, it can have an influence on everything else in your life.
Well, and it's this weird little bit of confidence. You walk back in your room to like do something, and you're like, "That's me."
Yeah.
And then
It looks
wild.
amazing. It looks comforting.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, again, it's the onion, and like how many people have. I don't think it's having time, right? It's creating time.
Right.
And I think that's like a concept where when you're in the spiral of life, especially once you have children or you're a caretaker for other people, like there's so many ways to get out of that commitment to yourself. And so I get that. I'm very fortunate in my situation that I have created all of this time to do the things that I now know that makes me feel good. Having flowers after I clean the house or whatever, like having a tidy house, doing all of these things I know are important to me in a way now that they become a habit. And food can become a habit. It's difficult, but I guess that's our goal here is to like try and figure out how we can help other people switch into it being part of their
automatic
schedule.
Into that. Automatic. We love Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
So good, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
No,
I read it
that's
so
what
fast. I
like.
actually want to go back into it because it was like, yes. I was
Yes,
like mad
you
and
agree with
happy the
everything.
whole book. And then I'm like, wait, you just zoomed through that so fast. Like I need to go back into it.
Totally.
It's really good. But those habits, I get it's difficult for somebody who's not in a position of eating well to think that it can transform literally your life. I mean, that's as basic as it gets.
Yeah.
It will. And I don't know. I guess that's just the goal is try and affect as many people as I can at the dinner table.
Right.
And let's just see where that keeps going.
Well, that's where we come in because we're lucky. We've for whatever reason, life has given us a perspective that a lot of people don't have. I think a lot of people would like to eat well if they could. I think a lot of my patients are like, yeah, I'd love to eat well. I'd love to know how to cook. I'd love to like clean my house and learn how to do everything efficiently, effectively. But
what do
it
you
just sounds
what
so
do you
hard.
think are there like do you hear a list of common reasons for neglect?
Oh yeah, it's the pressures. It's the pressures they feel, the priorities that they've placed in their head. We all have our excuses. We all come up with things that are important to us, and we don't see a viable path to improvement. It sounds impossible. It just sounds. It's like really you really have to take a step back and see yourself doing what you believe you can do. You have to really know you're capable of it, and not having that ability to feel that way is the biggest problem. It's the thing plaguing everybody man, I don't even think I'm capable of that. I don't know. That sounds like something they'll do, but I've never been able to cook. I
won't have time, won't have the skill, won't have the money.
Yeah. And so empowerment, like you're saying, is a huge part of it. Is like feeling like the confidence. You start small, you build the confidence slowly, it builds. And then suddenly you're like, I am capable of doing this. I am capable of cooking once a week. Okay, twice a week. Oh, 4 times a week. Oh, for my friends.
Yeah, meal prepping. Like
Right.
what?
Yeah, it always sounds hard and treacherous and this difficult journey, but you have to like show people that anyone can do it. You really have to. That's the conversation I'm always having is you can do this. You really can. You have to just be kind to yourself. You have to take it day by day. You can't have these big dramatic changes.
Yeah, it's not an overarching thing. It's what am I doing today?
Yeah.
Today, I'm going to eat the apple.
That's right.
Maybe tomorrow I'm going to eat a banana, but today I'm doing this. And I think that so many people see that as not making a goal or a plan.
Yeah.
But today is literally all you have.
Yeah.
So just do the thing today that you like wish you do.
Yeah. And that's simple. You're talking apple. You mentioned bringing an apple and cheese to the park. It's like, just pick that thing that's actually, rather than picking the chips,
Right.
it's something really simple, but it's
only today.
And
It's only today.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow you want to bring chips, but
That's
today you brought an apple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was back when I was saying like the bio-individual situation and us understanding that, you know, a lot of patients, a lot of people aren't willing to do the self-work, which I'm sure if you're reading the same kind of books I am, self-awareness is so empowering. If you don't know yourself and you don't actually know your weaknesses, why can't I cook?
Yeah. Right.
But really, what is the thing
What is
keeping
it?
me from
What's the
that?
root
What
cause?
is the weakness?
Yeah.
And so kind of going backwards, I think, with people too is helpful to be like, okay, but let's actually like get to why you can't. What's the can't? And how do we do something different tomorrow?
Yeah.
Because just if tomorrow you do that thing, now you know you can.
What's coming up? Hidden Potential.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Have you read Hidden Potential?
No.
Okay, there's your next book.
Yay.
I mean, this has changed my life. But it's a book about how kind of almost the power of jumping in on something and not having to be the expert at it. Kind of like kids do. You know, kids aren't afraid of looking dumb. They just they talk about how kids can learn languages better.
Right.
And part of it is not necessarily that their brain and the neuroplasticity. Part of it is that they learn a few words and they just start babbling and they just start speaking it.
Yeah.
But adults are like, oh no, I need to learn all the entire vocabulary and conjugation and everything before I even start. And really the people who are polyglots who speak 10 languages, they're not geniuses. They actually just jump in.
They weren't
and start
afraid.
doing it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably the key to cooking, and even part of your own journey is you just started jumping in and saying, okay, let me do this.
Right.
Let me try a recipe. And so maybe that's our encouragement to be
Totally.
try to just jump in, and maybe it's going to taste a little weird. Oh, and just pay attention.
Right.
Oh, I liked this worked. Oh, let me try this.
And what do I like when I go out and eat?
Yes.
What do I like and how do I maybe try and recreate that? Which is funny because I remember like what I really loved was curry, and like it's actually a really difficult like thing to get right spices and everything. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to try like curry right in. But I think this is a beautiful conversation for me to start thinking about using my own experience of how I jumped in.
Yeah.
And maybe even some like a week's worth of try this. Like even if it's just for people, how do you cook a piece of fish?
Right.
How do you cook a piece of chicken?
Basics.
What's the best way to roast a sheet of vegetables?
Yeah.
You know, just because I think, again, what we were saying, the information that we share, it's like, oh, it's so basic. Nobody needs to know how to do that.
Yeah.
But that's exactly maybe the
That is
missing link.
100%.
You know,
100%.
of like, no, it's just these like baby steps that you
Yes.
took in the beginning, the child jumping into it. Like where was your mind when you said, I'm going to cook this thing? Maybe I burnt it or maybe I didn't, but really just like a basic cookbook situation. Not a cookbook, but maybe I'm just going to start putting them into like a weekly thing on my Insta just to see what happens. Because that is the missing link.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you what are the keys, and I like that what you just mentioned was probably a list of some of the key culinary skills. You should know how to cook a piece of fish, roast vegetables, cook chicken. All of those are healthy, whole ingredients, and you can make all different cuisines from all of those.
Right.
You know?
If you made just one sheet pan of whatever your protein is you want, you can put that into different meals all week, whether you're having it with rice or you're having it with salad or you're adding it into a soup. But just that concept too of like not wanting to waste so much time. Like maybe you do cook one day, you take your day that you have a couple hours and you make these things. Yeah. And maybe you don't make every meal that week, but maybe you have more bites in the fridge. You're like, oh, I made a little salad out of that or something. And again, these little bits of confidence are crazy. It feels so good.
100%. You got to have like, you got to be kind to yourself too about it. You know, you can't have these like crazy expectations. You're going to make this beautiful, just be kind to yourself, start slow. You know,
make a dressing.
A day. Yeah, make a dressing. You're so right. And also compensate for the cleaning time, for the And if you fail, you fail, and that's part of the journey. You know, you learn from every failure. Failure is just another step to getting towards success. I mean, you learn from that. You learn from those mistakes.
And that's what I like about your cooking too, is like, okay, maybe it's not this like French chef background, but it's simple and it's wonderful and it's basic, but it's incredible and luxurious, and you're serving it in, you know, some fancy dinner party.
I still freak out when I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this. And I'm like, is this fancy enough for these people? And they're like, oh, it's so good.
It's gorgeous.
I'm like, it's vegetables and a protein. Like there's nothing crazy. But good quality, you know, going down to Wayfair, get a beautiful loaf of bread, get really nice French butter. I mean, if you have access to those things, like you can do really beautiful things with like very few ingredients.
Yeah.
I have a practical question for you that I think will be good. How do you pick a recipe? Because sometimes that's really hard. And I'm finding I'm having a block with that recently of like, you know, I'm thinking, okay, I want to cook something for me and my husband. I'm like, I just don't know what to make.
I like what you said. Sorry. I was
going
to say, I like what you said about thinking about what you like to eat and going out and yeah.
And that's it. Like, what would I go order at a restaurant? That's a fun way to be like, how do I recreate that meal? I also will look up a recipe based on one ingredient. Like these artichokes, these things have been popping up online of like, I've never prepared it the way they basically shave the whole thing off and then steam the, I mean, it's going to be intricate and crazy, but I want to do it because I've been seeing. So basically I've got maybe 5 or 6 websites that are continuous, like I said, the Mediterranean dish, that I just know they have solid recipes. And so I'll search artichoke or I'll search asparagus, whatever seasonal or whatever I think I'm going to make. And I'll go through maybe those top 5 of like, okay, they're doing it this way, or maybe I don't have those spices, so I go to the next one. But I think I'm lucky because I have clients that are also hungry for something, you know, because I'll ask them a lot, like, what are you craving? So that makes it easier. But even at
nice.
home,
you can ask yourself that.
Of course, like, what am I craving? And it's funny to cook for Nathan. I mean, he and I eat totally different, but that's what makes most of the meals like really nice. Like the vegetables, I just think like a sheet pan of vegetables is always so easy. You can add it to anything. And then who does he want a steak, or do I just want to stay with veggies that night? Or finding recipes. I mean, that is a good question. And I feel like a lot of people are really stumped by it. Do I even open all of these, you know, cookbooks I have? Rarely. I like on a Saturday or Sunday when I'm just sitting, I'll look through one and kind of like get a vibe, because I bought it for a reason, right? So I'll look through, and if anything jumps out at me, I'm like, oh, this, I remember why I like this style or this, you know, particular chef. Because the internet's full of a lot of bad recipes. I'm lucky that I do search through and have kind of like a top 5. And maybe that's something else I should incorporate into my page, like my top 5 links of where I like to go.
Can we share
of course.
Top 5
sources?
We'll
link it
everyone's gonna get a link.
Because
one
there's
Mediterranean dish.
Love her. So. And really, just like I said, once you get into the rhythm of her recipes, you can basically have all of those ingredients always on hand. It's kind of just like, there's one sauce that she always makes, labadamando or something, and it's like lemon, olive oil, garlic, oregano, but you can use that as a dressing, or you could use that as a marinade, or add it to your rice when you make veggies. It just, I like having something, a dressing in the fridge that I can add to anything. I feel like that's really saves me a lot when I don't want to make a meal, but I'm like, well, I have this dressing. So at least if I put some greens in a bowl, right? And maybe I have something else that I can put in here. At least I even just ate veggies, like greens. The other woman that I follow a lot is the glucose goddess.
I love her too.
Timing of eating, but that's a whole nother whole other ball game.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna do a glucose episode. I'm super interested in sugar and heart health.
Right. And like the timing of eating things. I wasn't even paying attention. I'm like, oh, the fruit before and not after and on a stomach. It's like lots of, and glucose, you know, you see it in people's faces when they finally change their diet.
maybe this is a good place to end.
Totally.
You know, we usually end with like a question of the day. I'm thinking maybe this time we end with, what is your biggest we go around, one biggest takeaway for how to get started? How do you start with food? How do you cook at home? How do you eat healthier?
Listen.
I think because I want to be healthy, like I want to thrive. I don't know how long I have. And so my commitment to myself is eat as many like nutrients as possible and hope for the best. You know, like there are so many other factors of our health and our life that we can't control. I can control this thing. And the more I do, the more like I get back from it. I'm healthy and doing all these things, and that could change, but at least I'm doing my part. You know, we have this like body that we live in and the soul's doing its own thing, but like you're responsible for keeping the shell as good as it can be. And so I think that's really my mission. Like I love eating, I love food, but I think it's really just about like maintaining this experience that I'm super curious and I want to keep doing it. And so like feed that.
Totally.
I feel like there's gratitude in there for what you have.
Very much.
And then there's responsibility
Yes.
to safeguard it. I love that.
Listen.
Yeah. It's your own healthcare,
That's right.
really.
Yeah.
Like we can't get upset at a doctor. We can't get like there's so much outward blame when it comes to our health.
A pill, a procedure.
Right?
An internal locus of control.
Right.
Yeah. Feeling like I can have the power to change my life.
Right.
For the good, for the worse, but it's on me.
And this concept, like woo-woo, here we go with it. The more I have put into myself of self-care, there's this, I don't even know when I first read it, but basically like the universe is watching you. And if you are willing to show up, it just keeps giving.
Yeah.
Like, and I would say my life is a testament to that type of belief system.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's religion. I don't know what it is. I think that it's just like a trust in something larger than myself.
Yeah.
And the more I show up, lots more keep showing up for me.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
I completely resonate.
I
I could tell you stories. Yeah, she could too.
I'm just thinking of you cooking for yourself when your boyfriend's at work at the firehouse and eating this healthy meal by yourself, and how someone sees, and you know, like it's not for nothing.
Right.
Because you're going to be rewarded for that, even when it feels like no one sees.
Love that.
Yeah. Oh, I can't think of a better answer. I can just build off of it, but yeah, that's a beautiful way to say it. We're so lucky to have got to meet you and talk to you like this.
Seriously, this is wonderful. It's inspiring on many levels. So thank you. And I hope this inspires people listening. Like, reach out to any of us, you know? I think questions are like, it's self-discovery. It's like us all helping each other figure out how to do this better. It's not...
Yeah, we don't have all the answers, but we're all curious. The three of us, we're curious. And hopefully people who are listening get a little curious, and then we can kind of work towards a better tomorrow.
Oh, well, thank you so
Love
much.
it. Thank you.
Love
Go
it.
us.
Oh, amazing.
You guys,
So
that was
good.
great.
Yeah.